Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when it's finds you. Just want to talk for a moment about a subject I've been avoiding for quite some time, and it's not probably going to go over well with too many folks because of tradition and conditioning. Because as believers, we've been conditioned through tradition in church to celebrate all of these pagan holidays. Every holiday we actually celebrate has roots in paganism under the guise of Christianity. And personally, when attacks uh, on Christianity became widespread some years back, and more people started saying, Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, I would say, let's put Christ back into Christmas. As a child, all I ever knew was it was a day we would receive presents. At church, we would get, the brown paper bags with candy, fruit, and nuts. At Easter, we would have Easter egg hunts after church. And see, as children, we didn't know any better because, that's what we've been taught. And, as an adult, when I started, I knew the Jehovah's Witnesses came by the house and knocked on the door growing up, but, didn't understand any of what they believed in because I was raised Baptist. And so as an adult, I was puzzled once I learned that Jehovah's Witnesses did not celebrate holidays. As I got older, I thought, what a wonderful time of year when everyone could put their different belief systems aside and show love to one another. I mean, when else have you ever seen, you know, um, Christians and atheists be able to agree on anything? And I told my wife the other day that the reasons pastors beg for so much money during this time of year around Thanksgiving and Christmas is because people tend to be the most generous at this time and normally don't say no to whatever these people ask for since they're already preparing to spend money anyway. And since I continue to study, the very thing that I felt that brought everyone together is the exact same thing that I now wonder how do these different beliefs make us come together? But you know what I have discovered by connecting dots, learning how to connect dots? By using marketing programs to get people of all beliefs together, it is nothing more than a precursor to the one world religion that is surely coming. So called faith leaders have already met with the Pope some time back. And when I started to study Christianity, I wasn't trying to disprove it as a viable religion. I was trying to strengthen my faith. But in my study, I found out it is a pagan belief system. And see, this video may cause me to lose some more subscribers. But at this point, who cares? I've lost people on social media because we had a lot of thoughts that was similar when it came to the Bible. But one of the things with me is I continue to study. And some of these very same people who would come to me personally and privately to help them understand biblical matters have now basically turned their backs on me. I mean, it's no big deal to me, but they didn't like some of the stuff I started teaching. But, I was able to be their person when they had some questions that they needed answered biblically. And, it is what it is. And so I'm not going to beg them to come back. I'm not going to, like I said, I've said before in the past, in the beginning, when I first was introduced to social media, I would, you know, seem like, me and an individual would have, a pretty decent online relationship. And then, Next thing I know, they beat unfriended me, and I'd reach out to them, hey, what went wrong, and never get a response from them. So I don't do that anymore, because people have their own reasons. I just wish more of us could be a little more mature and be able to communicate and understand what each of us believes and why we're different and why we believe the way we do. But hey, it is what it is. But I was trying to strengthen my faith. And, as I heard a guy say years before, or years ago, however you want to say it, 99% loyalty is 100% disloyalty. And see, then things started to make sense to me. You know, it's easy for all of these religions to unite with agnostics and atheists because all of them are pagan belief system. All of them, except the Bible. The Bible is not a religious system. The Bible is the Word. I mean, there's a you know black religious system out there. Nation of Islam. Some of them, they say we are the true children of Israel. Well, if they believe that, they can't still be Muslims. I mean, but that's just my thoughts. And you got a lot of us out there saying, black people are the true children of Israel, but they're still Christians. You can't believe that either. But, that's not why I'm here. I'm here to talk about holidays. And so, I've just believe whatever you want to believe. That's your business. I'm just sharing what I found and studied for myself. Whenever I study, I'm not studying trying to prove something to anybody else. I'm trying to study to help myself and my household. And for years, you know, our house has been a hub for holidays. I don't believe in holidays anymore. Sure, my wife still cooks, but my prayers have changed from what they used to be. We can still get together and feed family and friends, but we don't address those gatherings as holiday gatherings anymore. As a matter of fact, we've actually started having more gatherings for the family, almost once a month now where we'll feed them. And as things continue to tighten up around the world, the things many of us need to start doing is strengthening our bonds with family and close friends and strengthening our relationship with our Father. See, going forward, all of us are going to need relationship, and my wife and I are the elders of the family now, and I'll continue to teach about pagan beliefs. I'll continue to teach about pagan religions, and if they don't want to hear about it, we still have the food. We'll still feed somebody else, which is something the two of us have always done anyway. For years I've wondered why things have not improved in our communities. And you all know that I've said things about the church and pastors. Pastors, especially in the black communities around this country, are one of the main reasons we have not progressed as a people. Go back and listen to some of those other videos. Maybe I'll do a video one day, and talk about how the church controls the mother, the school system control the children, and the justice system control the men. But that's not going to be for this video. Maybe I'll spend some time and do a video on that one day. I just don't know at this point. And but pastors are the reason in many of our black communities around this country why we haven't progressed. I mean, just look at how they acted after this last election. I mean, whew, I mean, it's just disgusting. But some of them know that when true Israel wakes up, everything changes around the world. Now, that's according to the Bible. That's not according to mine. You see, they want to continue to operate under these false doctrines they've been teaching because they think by continuing to keep the people ignorant, they can delay Yah's plans and keep their prestige and current lifestyle striving. See, those who want to remain ignorant and those who want to remain ignorant, they actually let the pastor read to them on Sunday like it's story time at elementary school. Those who want to know the truth open their Bibles on a regular basis. See, why don't our churches celebrate Passover? Why don't they celebrate the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Day of Atonement, the Day of Pentecost, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Trumpets, and what's called the Last Great Day? See, I'm still learning about these myself. But why don't we even keep the Sabbath? That's the simplest thing out of everything. Worship and rest on Saturday. Why don't we do that? That's straight out of our Bible. Why are none of these things practiced in your Christian religions? I've heard pastors talk about holy days, but I have never heard of one talking about observing them. Every holiday we observe is pagan in origin. All of them are to celebrate something European. See, we find repeated commandments in the Bible to keep the Sabbath and the holy days, and that's outlined in Leviticus 23. You know, they are actually proclaimed as the feast of the to be proclaimed throughout all generations. See, John 7 describes the man you call Jesus Christ teaching at the observance of the Feast of Tabernacles. Over in Luke 22, it shows that the man you call Christ and his disciples kept the Passover in the days of unleavened bread. See, if the Bible is our guide to the observance of religious holidays, the conclusion becomes clear. We just had Thanksgiving around this country, and I guess wherever else they celebrated this time of year in the world, I don't know. But we don't even realize Thanksgiving was a holiday created to celebrate land grabs, colonization, and theft of natural resources of the indigenous people. It had nothing to do with being thankful that they were able to steal everything. That's the only thing we was thankful for. Like, see, that's what we're told today. It's a day set aside for us to give thanks. No, we're all celebrating a day to give thanks to thieves, colonizers, and murderers. That's what the school system taught us. That's what our parents taught us. That's what these lying pastors have taught us. See, pastors know better, but they still won't teach better. Most of our parents and grandparents didn't know better. They just taught what the school system taught us, what the school system taught them. And see, like my grandmother, my mother's mother, she didn't graduate high school, but she went back years later and got her GED. And so, but I'm just saying, Thanksgiving was nothing but wars between Native Americans and Europeans. It was a celebration of bloodshed by Europeans. See, that plan sounds familiar when it comes to Europeans. See, the meaning of Thanksgiving was changed when white Protestants, white Christians, felt that their money was threatened. Their dominance, their social status, and stuff like that. In reality, we are celebrating land grabs, theft, disease, and red rum of Native Americans by Europeans. That's what we're celebrating. Nothing more, nothing less. While we smile, laugh, eat, rejoice, and be merry, they laugh at us for celebrating their ancestors' misdeeds and wickedness. And I'm not saying all of them because, a lot of European descendants taught the same things we were taught in these things we call schools, these indoctrination camps, because they not educating nobody no more. They're indoctrination camp. And based on what I just said and based on what I've learned over the years, they've been indoctrinating us from time long before I even started school, which is why the General Education Board was put in place in 1902. General Education Board was the start of your public school system. And when you start looking at John Rockefeller starting that, he wasn't doing it out of benevolence. He said he wanted a system of workers, not a system of thinkers. So if he created the public school system designed after the school system in Prussia, and he said he wanted people to be able to work and not think, what do you think the public school system objective was for all of us that came through it? Don't think. That's why we have problems in society now, because people can't think. They just know how to do what they're told. So as more immigrants, European immigrants, and not just Europeans, but people from all different continents started coming from different countries and backgrounds. The WASP cluster strengthened its stronghold. And see, WASP, WASP means white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, white Christians. And see, this started to gain its strongest foundation in the 19th century. Now, who do we see right today protesting immigration more than anyone else? White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, white Christians. Amazingly, wherever Europeans go, the native populations accept them with open arms, and once enough Europeans migrate to that territory, they steal the land, unalive the natives, steal the natural resources, and then try to block any other cultures from migrating into the land they themselves were allowed into. See, in our Bibles, Hebrews were biblically instructed to welcome strangers into their lands. Christians reject everybody who's not a Christian, with the exception of those who the ill-informed pastors tell them to love, in spite of their hatred for the Messiah, in spite of their genocide, in spite of their usury, in spite of their plundering everywhere they've gone. See, but there were conditions to live among the Hebrews. Criminal elements were to be properly dealt with, but those in true need were supposed to be welcomed. See, Matthew 25 talks about that. Hebrews 13 and 2 talks about that. Jeremiah 7 and 6 talks about it. Isaiah 16 and 4 mentions it. What does Psalms 146 and 9 say about foreigners? And guess who wants the foreigners to leave? The very descendants of the very first foreigners. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, white Christians. The very people whose ancestors came here from somewhere else are the ones who want immigrants to leave. The same people whose ancestors told blacks to go back to Africa once they came here, although black people are the original inhabitants of this land, the same people whose ancestors changed the status of the Native American to white people with the $5 Indian contract, the same people whose ancestors changed the original definition of America from the copper colored people to meaning someone of European descent. Now, these are the same ones who want everybody else to leave. I remember some of you may have heard the name Donald Wildman before. And he did a little poem some years ago titled, That's What Christians Do Now. And I have to disagree. That's what Christians have always done. Let me tell you something. I don't care how many times you read through your Bible. There is no covenant with Christians anywhere in the Bible. Nowhere. Nope. Not even in those places in the Book of Acts. That was manipulation by Christians. Sadly, a country that was colonized by white Christians still promotes only ideas that favor white Christians. Sure, we've come a long way, but we have much further to go. Take a look at any multicultural or multi-ethnic church around this country and tell me how many black faces are in any position of authority or decision making for the whole. You ain't gonna find one. Not just black faces, Asian Indian, Chinese, any ethnicity from Africa, Caribbean, the Bahamas, Jamaica. You ain't gonna find it. They're all gonna be controlled, and all the decisions are gonna be made by WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. All of them. Now, even though JFK was white, he was initially rejected by white Anglo-Saxon Protestants because he was a Catholic. Because they want white Christians want to dominate everything. Everything. See, the Pilgrims were some of the biggest agents against what they then termed outsiders, although they themselves were outsiders. The Pilgrims unalived a lot of the natives, not just by the disease they brought here, but also by brute force. They set fires to the homes of the natives, and of the natives who survived, they unalived them by the sword. And after their savage rampages, they would insist that they were doing the Lord's work. Well, they were telling the truth. Lord actually means Baal. Lord doesn't mean what you think it means in your Bible. But the Bible says, call Baal Lord if Baal is your Lord, which is who many Christians are actually serving. The Pilgrims said they were sending the souls of the natives to hell. Now, isn't it is amazing that, you know, the Pilgrims were welcomed with open and loving arms, but they did these horrendous things. We always say a tiger can't change its stripes. Well, that is who the Pilgrims were before they came here: murderers and thieves. But history tells us they were godly. And we know which God they served, and it ain't the one from the Bible. They even unalived one Native American chief. They decapitated him and then displayed his head on a stake at the Plymouth Plantation. Why would they also name their village a plantation? Well, just like history told to make whites look good, they don't want you to know those pilgrims were also actively involved in the import and export of black people for slave trade profit. Pilgrims are said to have fled religious persecution from their original homeland. They feed us the story of pilgrims and how great they were. They were not. They were evil people. They try to tell us that America started when pilgrims came here, 128 years after Columbus supposedly discovered the land. So if Columbus discovered a new land and the first pilgrims landed in 1620, who were the people that were already in the Western world when Columbus got here? And what happened to the 20 indentured servants that were brought here in 1619, the year before the Mayflower arrived? See, if we blindly go with history, we would believe that pilgrims just came and found some empty plots of land and just started building a life. They had no concept of what life was like on a foreign land. No concept. They had no concept of the foods available here. Everywhere they went was already occupied by Native Americans. And these so called Protestant pilgrims were looking to exploit and enslave the native inhabitants. And just like Columbus has a day to celebrate his exploitation, theft, red rum, and enslavement of the natives, Pilgrims also have a day to celebrate their exploitation, theft, red rum, and enslavement of the native people. No one bats an eye, no one questions the validity of the story. Columbus is now being exposed for who he really was, and now it's time to do the same thing to the Pilgrims. See, history tells us the Revolutionary War was in the 18th century, and it's actually told from the perspective of descendants of Pilgrims who want to free themselves from the king. But see, the real Revolutionary War started as soon as the Pilgrim arrived here in the 17th century. Every holiday we celebrate in this country is in honor of Europeans, and they have the nerve to complain about Black History Month. Thanksgiving has nothing to do with thanks. Christmas has nothing to do with Christ. I mean, they even threw it in your face that you're celebrating a fat white guy with a beard that's just so benevolent. Now, I'm going to read you something from some writings some years ago. Uh, The Encyclopedia Britannica, the 1948 edition, said this: Christmas was not among the earliest festivals of the church. It was not instituted by Christ or the apostles or by Bible authority. It was picked up afterward from paganism. In the 1911 edition of the Catholic Encyclopedia, under the heading Christmas, this is what you're going to see. Christmas was not among the earliest festivals of the church. The first evidence of the feast is from Egypt. 1944 edition of Encyclopedia Americana says this: Christmas, according to many authorities, was not celebrated in the first centuries of the Christian church, as the Christian usage in general was to celebrate the death of remarkable persons rather than their birth. A feast was established in memory of this event. Christ's birth in the 4th century. In the 5th century, the Western Church ordered it to be celebrated forever on the day of the old Roman feast of the birth of Saul, as no certain knowledge of the day of Christ's birth existed. Now, you can do your own research and see who actually did this, gave out things to poor children, and he wasn't white, and it wasn't tied to a holiday. Easter has nothing to do with the resurrection. Why do we celebrate rabbits? It's a celebration of the fertility goddess. St. Patrick's is an Irish holiday celebration to celebrate St. Patrick, an Irish patron. Why did our school teachers convince us to wear green and celebrate Irish culture when I went to two predominantly black elementary schools? Veterans Day is really to celebrate European military dominance over other countries and cultures. Halloween is the demonic celebration. 9/11 is a remembrance of an attack on white America. Make no mistake about it. It They say we all came together, but it was more because white America supposedly got attacked. Pearl Harbor is a remembrance of an attack on white America. The Holocaust is a remembrance of atrocities done to whites. Valentine's Day is a European celebration to celebrate Saint Valentine of Rome. And just so you know, it is also considered a Christian holiday. President's Day is a celebration of white men. 4th of July is to celebrate white people's supposed fight for freedom from white people. Labor Day is to support trade union workers, which actually excluded blacks until the mid 20th century. Memorial Day is a set aside time to mourn white soldiers lost in battle. So you get a history lesson today. Conservative superstar Tucker Carlson, you know, said a while back that immigrants must not replace the original cultures and values of this great land. Oh, really? When all the Europeans, when are all the Europeans going back home because none of them abide by the customs that were in place when their ancestors came here? They actually destroyed the native customs, implemented their own, and then force fed it to everybody else. And now the entire land is being governed by foreign customs, which are now threatened by foreign customs. So you just can't make some things up. Oh, excuse me. See, this land was populated by native Hebrews, which is why one of Columbus's ship captains was Hebrew. The original language of this land was Hebrew, not English. See, when I was in elementary school, we used to sing the song called "This Land Is Your Land, This Land Is My Land," and it was written by a guy named Woody Guthrie. And see, what most of us were never taught was that the finalized version didn't include the verses about the wall trying to stop me. And he wondered if God blessed America for me. And see, amazingly, they had us sing this song in both of the predominantly black elementary schools I attended. What they never taught us is that the land was originally the land of our black ancestors and then stolen from them. Then the people who stole it from them then proceeded to lock them out from any type of ownership and benefit. Then they enslaved them and forced them to work the land for free with them, only realizing the Europeans only realizing the benefits of them working the land they once owned. See, Europeans came in and claimed this entire land and no one else's. They claimed it as their land and no one else's. See, the Europeans were not strong enough and too lazy to do the hard labor that this land required. See, when the Pilgrims arrived, they stopped at Cape Cod, Massachusetts, but they initially wanted to go head toward the mouth of the Hudson River because they thought the land would be more fertile enough for them to form on. See, they got caught in some bad weather and they stopped at Plymouth Rock. And since they were afraid to drink the water because of contamination, they drank beer. They even had the children drinking beer. But see, the beer supply started to run low, so they didn't want to risk further travel. And since they didn't have much to drink, they stayed right there. And it says that they came in. History tells us Mayflower came here in 1720. And that was the first pilgrim got here. Well, that's a lie. That's a lie too. Some Pilgrims had been here already. One of the guys named Stephen Hopkins signed the Mayflower Compact. See, Hopkins had actually went to Jamestown in 1610 after he shipwrecked in Bermuda in the year 1609. See, this is the exact same Jamestown that the first indentured servants arrived in 1619. Now, was Stephen Hopkins doing a search and enslaved mission like Columbus? I mean, I don't know. See, based on what happened with Stephen Hopkins, they said it was actually the inspiration for William Shakespeare's The Tempest. But see, when pilgrims struggled to survive after they first got here, the Wampanoag tribe taught them how to work the land for planting, and a year later, the tribe showed them how to prepare a meal for what we now call Thanksgiving, but it was actually celebrated in the fall. See, the tribal chief and the tribe were initially skeptical of all Europeans because many natives continued to die because of all of the diseases the Europeans brought here. See, Europeans first started coming to these shores over here first in 1524 when Giovanni Verrazzano mapped the eastern seaboard. And see, many Europeans were initially welcomed until something happened starting in the year 1610, the year Stephen Hopkins got here in Jamestown. Those same Europeans that had came here before the Mayflower started kidnapping the natives and selling them into slavery. A guy named Thomas Hunt decided to enrich himself, and he kidnapped 24 natives of the Nauset and Patuxet tribes to sell into slavery over in Spain. And see, some of you may remember on previous videos when I mentioned that the slavery story has been told us all wrong because of once Columbus came here, they started capturing natives and taking them back to Spain, shipping them down into Africa, after some years had passed, so you can dilute the memories of the ancestors so it can be passed on to the children. Take them to Spain, ship them down into Africa, separate them at the slave ports, put them on ships, and send them back to their original homeland without a history to remember or pass down in what we now call the Americas, North and South Americas. See, the people on the Mayflower consisted of Puritans and strangers, non-separatists. That's what they call non-separatists. They call them strangers. And say non-separatists believed the Church of England could be purified. Well, after all these years, have we saw any purification of any church? We all know the answer to that. See, but they say they wanted religious freedom, but they really came here to make fortune. How were they going to make fortunes in a land where they had no knowledge of the territory? Isn't it amazing that Europeans call themselves everything but godly? They call themselves Puritans. They call themselves Calvinists, Lutherans, Mormons, Christ-like, Baptists, Christians, etc. I did a video a while back and told y'all we have over 4,000 religious sects around the world. That's a whole lot of different thought processes out of one book. Has that ever captured your attention? How you get 4,400 different meanings out of one book? Algebra is algebra in the book. Science is science in the book. History is history in the book. It never changes. And if you go into a class trying to change some stuff, they're going to put you back in line. So how did we get 4,400 different meanings out of one book? This doesn't make sense. But they wanted to make fortune. How are they going to make fortune when they had no knowledge of the territory? And since they had no skill set, they sought to make peace with the tribes. But that was only a manipulation tactic. Make peace and learn everything about the territory, the foods, and the other tribes that they might be warring with and everything. make peace with them, and then try to destroy them. See, their original destination was Virginia, but as I mentioned earlier, they got caught in some bad weather. Now, speaking of Virginia, where was George Washington from? Where was Thomas Jefferson from? As a matter of fact, where were the most of your slave holding presidents from? So, with all of your presidents being from Virginia, what was so good about Virginia that these pilgrims wanted to go there before the fake founding fathers went there or born there, whatever they did? What was so good about Virginia? Because, think about it, that's pretty much was the largest slaveholding state. And I think then after Virginia was South Carolina or something like that. But they wanted to go to Virginia. They, even after arriving, because they still had no knowledge, no skill, no food, and things like that, the natives were, still taking care of them, helping them survive. They still lived, half of the crew, half of the people that was on the Mayflower lived on the Mayflower for another year. So, should we be celebrating holy days or observing holy days or observing holidays? Does it really matter what religious days we celebrate? I mean, holidays are religious celebrations. Holy days are biblical celebrations. Now, as I always tell you, don't take my word on nothing. Research it and prove what I said is wrong or prove what I said is right. Never take my word for it. Think about holidays. The money we spend makes, in most cases, Europeans richer, and it helps them enhance their lifestyles. And as I've seen throughout history, they are always seeking to enhance themselves, increase their fortunes based on people's misunderstanding and ignorance. I'll talk to you later.